Welcome back to Cinematic. I'm so close to just doing this all in one take. I don't want to edit anything. I want this to be my Murder on the Orient Express. Do you remember, everybody remembers, right? The first time they saw the Murder on the Orient Express, the 74 one, by the way, not the, that one's good too. But when Ingrid Bergman has her scene and she's just like going and going and you're getting like, you're on the edge of your seat, just like, when are they gonna cut? And they don't. That's what I want to do. That's what this should be. This video right here should be.
But it wasn't.
Can I please tell you about Once Upon a Time in China 3, a series I am very happy to return to. I loved the first two. You can go back and listen to those episodes for proof. And that means that I've done more episodes on this than any other franchise. I did do all three from the 36th Chamber trilogy, but those aren't sequels, so I don't know. First sequelized trilogy I've ever done on the show. And very happy to report that this is very much another Once Upon a Time in China movie in all the best ways. First off, it looks amazing from set to cinematography. And granted, we open on location in the Forbidden City, and it's probably impossible to make that place look bad on camera at all. But Choi Hark's direction is perfectly suited, if maybe a little more restrained than the first two. You know, maybe there's one or two less of those quick zooms or sweeping shots while somebody delivers a line. But again, it looks amazing. I think I said the second looks better than the first. I'm gonna say the third looks better than both. Secondly, it also wastes no time with some of those turn-of-the-century tensions. We're at the Forbidden City because the Empress Dowager Cixi has arrived. And right away she notices a foreign devil across the way, filming everything with his picture machine, and talks about how foreigners will simultaneously praise their navy while also attempting to destroy it. So she, with the Prime Minister, devise a plan in the form of a national lion dance competition. The idea being that it will, I think, showcase Chinese culture and heritage while the foreigners are left to their own devices and I guess hopefully destroy themselves in the process, which, fair. And roll opening credits. That's another thing that every single one of these movies has been good at, is communicating that clear statement of purpose, or maybe premise more accurately up front, and then digging into the nuance throughout the body of the film. Much of that thanks to our heroes. Jet Li is back as Wang Fei-hung for the last time? No. He will also do Once Upon a Time in China in America, which, now that I know how centrally Western influences figure into the story of this franchise, I'm actually really curious to see what happens when they go to America. But Jet Li was not in 4 and 5. That's where Vincent Chow takes over, who we saw in The Legend of Feng Sayuk not too long ago. Otherwise, Rosamund Kwan is back as 13th Aunt, and her and Wang Fei-hung are fully engaged at this point, although there is still kind of a will they, won't they about the relationship. Not that maybe the marriage won't go through, but Wang Fei-hung is still kind of charmingly aloof as to the matters of the heart, you could say, while 13th Aunt is pretty adept at tricking him into showing affection. It's all very fun and cute. But 13th Aunt still has one foot in the West, like she has in the last two movies, dresses like a Westerner, the whole deal. But this time, there's also a literal Westerner after her heart in the form of an old Russian college buddy named Tomanovsky, who supposedly traveled all the way from Russia to find her now in Beijing, which is where they traveled to for this movie. So Wang Fei-hung has that to contend with as well. But it's a smart twist, actually. In fact, overall, this movie is, again, like I think I said for the second, really good about not retreading. We get the characters we love. They have some of the traits we've come to love, but it's not like they're going through the same journey. In fact, I think there were some smart choices that will show us that they are the characters that have changed throughout the first two movies in this, the third. And this might sound like a strange thing to say, but I think they managed to do the same for the martial arts in this movie. I think there's less of it. Like, at the very least, less out-and-out Kung Fu versus matches, you could say. But none of it's any lesser at all. The first extended fight scene that we get is between, actually, Wang Fei-hung's dad, who has it is actually a thing. Kind of like Wang Fei-hung had Po Chi Lam, I believe it was, in the first movie that got destroyed. His father, Wang Kai-ying, played by Lao Shun, by the way, He has the 10 Tigers of Guangdong, I believe, is his martial club or association in the film, but it's just full of lion heads for lion dancing. And I did look that up, actually, by the way. I wanted to know if the crossover was something that happened historically. And it was. Obviously, between lion dancing and martial arts, there would have been a lot of crossover, especially with the choreography. I guess it still is at that point in the movie and in real life. But I guess the martial clubs really picked up on the Foshan style of lion dancing, which would make sense, obviously, for Wong Fei-hung, which is a Southern style and is the style that's used in Once Upon a Time in China 3. But the first extended fight scene in the movie takes place there because one of the rival schools, stop me if you've heard this one, has an issue with a neighboring master in Wong Fei-hung's dad and shows up to destroy the place and does so. And I don't know if I'm going to describe this entirely correctly. I don't know if I ever do, but the choreography is so efficient, so tightly done. And even when it gets fantastical, which is basically when the character of Ghostfoot 7 gets involved, played by Hung Yanyan, he is just all over the place and it is a delight to watch. So had to look him up. Turns out Lau Kar-leung found him while they were filming Martial Arts of Shaolin in 1986. I think that was episode 26 for me, way back in the day. And hired him immediately as Jet Li's stunt double. Must have impressed him that much. And that was a job he kept for Once Upon a Time in China 1 and 2. In fact, he was on screen into as the White Lotus High Priest that Jet Li has the final fight with. In the end, it's not, because that's the movie that also has Donnie Yen as the corrupt official. So there's kind of two final fights. They wrap up the White Lotus story with maybe my favorite match of the movie, which again is saying something, in the movie that also has Jet Li versus Donnie Yen shortly thereafter. So this is the second time I've seen Hung Yong-yeon on screen and been like, who is this guy? And in this movie, his character isn't a one-off either. He's not just a goon that the rival school, speaking of which, it's the Daiping factory. But when Ghostfoot 7 is injured later on, because Lang Foon, who's also in this, Max Mock does a great job, is up to some shenanigans, he releases a stampede of horses that really looks like it hurts some people. And if it doesn't actually hurt Hung Yang, like the horses then run right through the center of the set, like extras and actors on both sides of them. I don't know how they do it. I do, they just do it. But when Ghostfoot 7 gets injured there, he's basically kicked to the curb by the Daiping faction and then adopted by Wong Fei-hung. And it doesn't happen immediately, but it does happen eventually, and becomes like one of the best characters in the movie for me because he's like the most loyal and still has the skills, right? He becomes instrumental in the rest. It's great. So I had to look up the martial arts director as well. I thought maybe the brothers were back. If you'll remember, the first was directed, the martial arts were directed by two Yuan Wuping's brothers and Lau Kar-leung's brother. And then the second was just Yuan Wuping himself. But neither of them are back for this one. It's actually a man by the name of Yuan Bun, who I hadn't heard of before. Hong Kong Movie Database just says, sometimes they'll have a little bio towards the bottom, and it says that he was part of the same opera troupe as Jackie Chan, but he's actually been in like 100 things before this, like on screen acting, and I have not seen a single one of them. Somehow that still happens. That's how deep the rabbit hole goes. That's how. But he goes on to fully direct Once Upon a Time in China 4, not only the martial arts, but the entire movie. And I think Hung Yang gets to reprise his character in the others as well. Yeah, he's in 4, 5, and America. So, cool. And I'll come back to the action yet again, because basically what happens is that the lion dance, or the specter of the lion dance competition at least, just breeds a bunch of infighting amongst the people. And even though Wong Fei-hung is able to unite a couple of the factions, neither of which is the Daiping factory, which is by far the worst. They're out there like stabbing people in the leg as they dance by. But when Wong Fei-hung sees that this is happening, he's like, we got to take this to the court. And in so doing, gets summarily dismissed. You know, it's with a bunch of niceties, like, yeah, we'll look into it. And to the movie's credit, to Wong Fei-hung's credit, he turns around saying, because has always been the thing with Wong Fei-hung. He still has kind of this lingering faith in the system, in what should work. And as they're leaving, immediately says, okay, we have to find another way. So I think that's progress for the character that they've smartly included in the movie. And that also kind of completes the triangle of a Once Upon a Time in China movie. You got the Chinese government, which has set up this lion dance competition thinking it'll promote their people and maybe embarrass their foreign enemies at the same time, and instead starts a gang war and provides an opportunity for them to be assassinated, because it turns out that the Russians, Tomanovsky included, have planned to assassinate the prime minister at kind of the height of the, it's almost James Bond-ish, except for the 19th century, you know, like the assassination will occur at the height of the celebration when the green firework goes off, I think it is. And I do love that it's the Russians. It feels very Cold War kind of, you know, the commies are at it again. But if that's the second part of your triangle, then the third and most important, as always, is Wong Fei-hung himself, kind of the champion, hero of the people that also seems to bring the best out of them, even if sometimes he has to kick it out of them, which is his solution, by the way. He ends up joining the competition himself, so now he's contending directly with Dai Ping, and their lions are now outfitted with more spears, some mouth scissors, and something called a meteor hammer. It does get a little messy, I will say, and I think Choi Hark knew it, because he throws in a couple slow-mo shots on the action, more than a couple, in fact. But what Yuen Bun, the action director, does here, I think is pretty darn special, actually, because the choreography is working on basically at least two different levels, in that it splits the difference between the people and the lions. Like, sometimes the choreography is evoking the lions fighting each other. Sometimes it directly involves the people underneath. It's kind of amazing. It might take a couple viewings, but it's kind of amazing. And this is all, of course, while the Russians are assembling their sniper rifle. 13th is running some interference, and Wong Fei-hung himself is also trying to stave them off where he can. So the Chinese blockbuster was alive and well in 1993. This is an all-timer of a trilogy so far. I guess again, there's 6 of them, so we'll call it a trilogy. Maybe this is an Indiana Jones circumstance where there are only 3 of those movies and they're all great. Or maybe it's a Surf Ninjas situation, which I don't know how it would be, but that's my segue, because that's the movie I'm doing next week. So come back for Surf Ninjas. Thanks for hanging around for this one. As always, I am never appreciative enough on camera to those of you that do watch, like, and subscribe, and especially find their way over to Patreon or Ko-Fi and throw a couple bucks in the tip jar. You are my heroes. You are my Wong Fei-hungs. Bye.